Story 1. I take care of many homeless individuals in the hospital. Prior to release, our social workers try to get them into a shelter, but most of the time they refuse and wish to return to their car or the street. Mental illness and addiction are very common in this group. Story 2. I think society should meet everyone's basic needs. Everyone should be able to get housing assistance, food, healthcare, and other essentials. People who can work hard and support themselves should be able to use those same services while also buying things they enjoy. The people are still homeless. After that, it is their choice. I don't think most people would choose not to work just because they are living in a difficult home environment with roommates. I believe many people would have more ability to work and contribute to society if they did not have to worry constantly about their survival. Story 3. I work for the largest nonprofit organization that assists the homeless in a major American city. The answer is to continue what we do every day: housing, healthcare, therapy, and resources. It works. The problem is that the process is slow. There are always new people who are unfortunately being thrown out on the street. The only way to truly solve the homelessness problem in America is to create livable wages along with affordable rents and have safety nets for those who have absolutely no one to help them other than their fellow Americans. Story 4. Most of the responses in this thread are horrifying. Edit. It is even worse today, with upvotes and downvotes clearly skewing everything toward the negative side. I am saving this thread to link to the next time I see someone complaining about how left-leaning Reddit is. Story 5. Housing first initiatives, harm reduction, mental health, and disability services that are effective. If you plan on helping people one-on-one, I recommend actually going out and talking to individuals to understand their needs, rather than assuming they need food or other assistance. Story 6. There is a distinction between someone who is genuinely homeless and a person who is not. A homeless person follows the rules, has a good work ethic, but due to circumstances beyond their control, cannot financially afford a home anymore. They will do whatever it takes to get back on their feet. A person who is not homeless does not adhere to rules, does not want to work, and lacks moral code or integrity. Signed, a former person in this situation. The minute I accepted responsibility for my actions, my world changed. Story 7. When mental hospitals started closing, we did a disservice to people with mental illness. They could have been cared for there. Now, many of these individuals are on the streets. Story 8. There are more homes and apartments than there are people in the United States. There is no reason we cannot turn the abandoned ones into free housing for the homeless so that they can at least attempt to get back on their feet. It is hard to get a job if you cannot shower. It is hard to receive mail if you do not have a place to receive mail. It is hard to sign up for anything without an address. Would some people take advantage of it? Sure. But I would rather the people struggling get the help, even if it means some people do not actually need the help. There also needs to be help for those who are homeless due to mental illnesses, providing the proper care that they need. Story 9. There is no single solution or single reason why someone becomes homeless or remains so. A few reasons for becoming homeless include family abuse, mental illness, and borderline poverty. Addiction is another factor, which can occur before or after homelessness and may be related to the prior reasons mentioned. At the very least, we need proper and effective family support to prevent abuse, as well as a holistic approach to supporting victims of abuse and neglect. This requires public funding and the will of the public to prioritize the issue. In Alberta, there was a high-profile case that exposed how child welfare services were forced to use motels to house adolescents and teens because resources were so limited. For mental illness and addiction, similar long-term resources are needed. Individuals require regular and routine care from a team of professionals, along with appropriate and relevant housing options. It takes money and experts over the long term to truly assist people who lack resources or support. This is a complex issue that demands public empathy and nuanced planning. Story 10. First, we need to accept that we cannot help a portion of the homeless without forcing them into mental hospitals against their will. Second, we need to focus on those willing to accept help and provide housing for them. We should prioritize housing for the elderly, families with children, and those unable to work due to disability. Third, we must decide if we want a society where people with severe addictions or mental illness are allowed to simply suffer on the streets. This is the most difficult part. One reason mental hospitals closed was the terrible conditions inside them. What we have now is not much better. In addition to housing, access to healthcare and food is essential. All of this will require a significant amount of money. The harsh reality is that the average American does not want this solution. They want to avoid seeing the problem or paying for it. They hope someone else will handle it. This is essentially what is happening, as the usual solution of moving homeless people from one city to another has failed because other cities do the same. Story 11. Ensure their basic human needs, the things they need to live and participate in society, are met, freely available, and accessible to everyone. Healthcare, housing, universal basic income, food, clean water, and more. Story 12. Universal healthcare. Universal basic income. Everywhere universal basic income has been used, it has been a success. It has never caused a lowering of job performance and objectively leads to a more secure and happy population at all wealth levels. Story 13. Unfortunately, I think people define all the individuals wandering around a city as homeless. My understanding is that there are three categories. The first is truly homeless people who are going through a rough patch and really need support. The second includes those with mental health issues, whose needs differ from the first group. The third group consists of individuals struggling with drug addiction, who have their own issues. Each group requires a different kind of help. Lower-cost housing will only assist the first group. It does not address the needs of the second and third groups. Story 14. The federal government guarantees jobs with a living wage for everyone. These would be jobs that help the community, such as cleaning the streets. It is explained in the book The Deficit Myth. For anyone who would say inflation, please note that Republicans just passed the largest inflationary bill that will not help the middle class. Guaranteed jobs would not even cost 1% of that bill. Story 15. Impossible because they do not want to help themselves. They only want their drugs, alcohol, and no work. Story 16. Oh, I don't know. Maybe house them? There are more vacant houses in the United States of America than there are homeless families. They are mostly owned by investment funds and individuals to sit empty to drive the price up on housing for everyone else. Story 17. I give them old shoes or extra socks if I have them. Some people just want to stay out of the race, so I am not going to force anything. Socks and shoes are helpful. Story 18. I am a 75-year-old male. I have been contributing to organizations that help the homeless for decades. There is a wide variety of support available for homeless people. But is it enough? Obviously not. Now, to your question, there is no single answer because there are multiple causes and different types of homelessness. There are the temporary homeless, those who become homeless due to job loss, foreclosure, house fires, conflicts with roommates, and similar reasons. One charity I have supported for decades has told me that people in this group generally move out of shelters and into temporary or permanent housing within 6 months. Some take longer, of course. Then there are the chronic homeless, which presents more complex problems. Many of these individuals suffer from mental health issues or addiction. For this group, I do not have any solutions. The charity I support tries to help them, but their capacity is limited. They are not equipped to handle people actively using drugs or alcohol, and they lack sufficient staff to address mental health issues. They have strict house rules, and violating them means being asked to leave. This is because they do not have the personnel or expertise to manage those challenges. Maybe someone else knows the answers, but I do not. I wish I did. Just recently, this week, I had to stop helping a woman. My daughter brought her to my attention. I assisted her for a couple of months, but 2 days ago, I told her I was done. Her situation is not an easy fix. She is an addict in denial. As long as she is in denial, she will never recover. I have concluded that she is not simply facing setbacks and needs a helping hand to get back on her feet, which was her initial story. Her troubles are self-inflicted because she refuses to take personal responsibility for her poor decisions. She blames others for every issue and avoids reality by drinking. When I told her she needed to try to stop, she claimed she had. However, after losing a couple of jobs I helped her obtain and facing eviction from the housing I got for her, it became clear she had simply switched to marijuana and kept that secret. It is sad, but I am neither a psychologist, therapist, nor a drug abuse counselor. I am wasting my time and effort on her. I left her with information on where she can seek help from professionals better equipped to assist her. But she does not seem interested. The last word I received from my daughter is that the woman appears to be looking for a man who will take care of her in return for. Story 19. I propose a social program that will replace all welfare for adults. It is called dorm room welfare. Any adult who has difficulty taking care of themselves can check into a special part of a community college or trade school. They get a dorm room and attend school for free. They earn degrees, certifications, and work internships until they can care for themselves. They are trained for jobs based on their aptitude, the demand for workers, and the ease of training. The goal is for them to be successful. They get time and ingredients to cook their own meals. Either they learn to cook or they face consequences. People who cannot reasonably hurt themselves through negligence often struggle, so they need to learn to cook on a real stove and in a real oven. There is childcare for their children, similar to that for children of military parents, as that is effective in raising responsible kids, aside from having a biological father in the home. Everyone in the family must adhere to a code of conduct similar to what is expected in a school, or they get removed from the program. I wish we could save everyone, but that would bankrupt even the government. Therefore, if a person cannot succeed in dorm room welfare, they fall to the bottom and become truly homeless. As a bonus, because anyone can check in, this program reduces job dissatisfaction over many years. It provides social mobility up to the level of a skilled trade. Skilled trade workers can advance to become master craftsmen and run their own businesses. Story 20. Deregulate. Regulations remove substandard units from the market. However, substandard and inexpensive units are better than none. Story 21. Multiple identical towers with only low-income units that are underpoliced and provide little to no social assistance. Story 22. Creating a residency that shelters young people, where they need to work in order to keep it running. They must continue studying as well. In addition, the home should produce something such as dairy products, clothes, or furniture, and the residents should work. This will not only help keep the place running but also make the residents feel useful and worthy, keep them away from vices, and help them become responsible citizens with meaningful lives. If production does well, they could receive a salary. Something like this. Story 23. Low-cost dormitory-style housing with integrated mental and physical healthcare services. Goal. Move unhoused people toward self-sufficiency. Story 24. Well, not to be obvious, but low-income housing, and a lot of it is the beginning. However, there is no financial incentive to do that. Story 25. Decades of research have proven that the number one and most cost-effective way to reduce homelessness is to provide housing. The solution is to house people. Story 26. This one's easy. Universal healthcare. I've spent a lot of time near the homeless population in downtown and West Oakland. People are sick or they are broke because they are sick. Before the Affordable Care Act and Mark Cuban's Cost Plus Pharmacy, I was spending 80% of my salary on medication and insurance. 80%. Story 27. You know how when you are at a large family dinner and someone says, "No second plates until everyone has had one"? That but make it houses. Story 28. Have true universal health care. Create more public housing, increase public mental health funding, and establish free drug rehabilitation centers. The goal is to assist individuals before they become homeless. Greatly expand Section 8 housing, increase public school funding, and offer free job skills training along with public grants to encourage employers to hire these individuals. Create grants that would enable low-income people with mortgages to stay in their homes longer before foreclosure and to refinance at a lower interest rate. Story 29. Easy pathways towards employment, with no address or suit required for an interview. Forced mental health treatment and drug detoxification, or maybe forced relocation. There could be a big city where many people are homeless and supported by the government, while most cities are left to the rest of us. Story 30. Mandatory universal health care. Everyone is required to attend an annual physical and mental evaluation. If you do not pass, you are institutionalized until you can pass. Want to live in your car? Fine, as long as you are not a danger to yourself or others. Story 31. My solution is simple. Bring back the poor farms. There is plenty of empty land in this country. Fence off a couple hundred acres and house the homeless there. If you want shelter, here are the materials, tools, and instructions. Figure it out. Want food to eat? Here is your equipment, seeds, fertilizer, and more. Figure it out. After a couple of years, you can petition to leave. By then, the person is free of drugs because they have been in a remote location for years and have learned useful skills. Story 32. Jail, mental hospitals, and shelters. Simply put, if someone is on the streets by choice or because they have a mental illness, they are locked up until they can be rehabilitated. If they are working but cannot afford housing, put them in shelters until they can afford it. Ideally, we also bring back a civilian conservation corps type government program to provide jobs that come with housing and meals. Story 33. The metro area I live in has spent over $1 billion in 5 years trying to address homelessness, and the problem is worse now than when they started. Any serious, sustainable solution is going to have to be multifaceted by definition. Affordable housing is one piece of the puzzle, as are shelter access and effective addiction services. My unpopular opinion is that, if we are serious about confronting this crisis, we have to be honest about a hard truth. Many of the chronically homeless will never reintegrate into society. I am specifically referring to those with profound, untreated mental illness who require long-term institutional medical care. That kind of intervention is riddled with ethical and moral challenges, which is probably why it has been largely avoided in modern policy. But it is long past time we acknowledged this uncomfortable reality. Every person facing homelessness is a human being worthy of dignity, but not all are salvageable in the way our current systems assume they are. Story 34. I would love to build tiny home communities where residents can have their own space, lock their doors, and be safe. Story 35. People with mental illness need to be in a mental institution for their own well-being. Others should be divided into two groups. One for the economically homeless and another for those with addiction problems. I would build small shelters scattered throughout the city, each with private lofts where individuals can live while receiving help to address their issues. Large shelters could cause problems. This is easier said than done, but it would work if the government took it seriously and hired the necessary professionals, such as social workers and psychologists, to provide support. Story 36. The fact is, many don't want help. If they refuse to help themselves, you can't force them to live the way most of society does. Nobody can help someone who refuses to see the issue with their behavior and wants to change it. Not without essentially psychological reconditioning. When you live with addiction, mental illness, and constant threats, you form defenses and learn to deal with it, and those make it difficult, scary, and painful to reintegrate. As harsh as it sounds, some people ruin themselves beyond the point of fixing, or believe they do and will never try to fix their life because the risk of going through all that and failing is more terrifying than getting high again and continuing the way they have been. While I don't trust the previous administration to handle the situation well or decide who needs to be institutionalized, and believe this leaves too much room for abuse, I do agree that the problem won't be addressed without most affected individuals going through some kind of inpatient program. Very few people can or will get themselves out of that situation regardless of available resources because they lack the self-control to manage those resources without outside intervention. Someone else needs to be in charge of it. I've been homeless for a couple of years. I've tried living with these people. There are good homeless people who are just down on their luck. But if you actually hang out with homeless people, try to help them, offer rides or food, it becomes very clear that many are in their situation because of their own actions and remain there because of their actions. The few who are just down on their luck and want out are actively trying to do so, living in shelters, seeking help from social services, and so on. But some people just want to be methamphetamine users and are proud of it. It has become its own subculture. I don't think anything will ever fix it perfectly. The fact is we are slaves to our genetics, and no matter how good society becomes, every species will occasionally produce individuals not equipped to survive in the current world. No matter how we design society, some people will always fail and end up poor or homeless. That is evolution, not society. We can't end it permanently, we can only manage it. Story 37. People should be less greedy and more humane. It is shocking that the richest 1% own nearly 40% of the world's wealth, while billions struggle to survive. Story 38. Are there no prisons? No poorhouses? We need to decrease the surplus population. Just kidding. Some homeless people are genuinely down on their luck, and even some with addictions can be helped. But some people are just too troubled to even reach. You see the people affected by fentanyl all lying in their own filth. They just want to get intoxicated, and that is it. Story 39. It would be cheaper to house all of them permanently than it currently costs to deal with their camps and put them in jail. The only reason nobody has done that is because it would be seen as too woke and unfair, when from an economic standpoint it is the best option. Story 40. Move every single person to Wyoming, the least populous state in the country by far, with the most open land. Let them build whatever kind of civilization they want and live off the land. Story 41. Reallocating government funding to increase support for social services and social safety nets. Story 42. Housing without restrictions on drug use. Housing first. How are you supposed to quiet drugs on the street? Story 43. I volunteer at a soup kitchen and donate money because I know the funds are used to purchase food for the homeless. I also donate to another soup kitchen I know personally. Additionally, I contribute to a group of doctors who treat homeless people. They have a veterinarian who treats their animals for free, and I know the veterinarian personally. I have automated payments set up each month. Story 44. Open more mental hospitals and provide care for people suffering from conditions such as schizophrenia. Establish more drug treatment centers to support individuals struggling with drug addiction. Begin with a 1-year treatment period and adjust as necessary. Story 45. Free healthcare. Wealth redistribution from the top 1%. Make wealth hoarding illegal. Make corporate ownership of housing illegal. Story 46. Drug administration offices where people can safely use drugs also provide therapy, counseling, and medical help. They educate, support, empathize, and offer a pathway toward recovery. The incentive to use the clinic should be their addiction. Give them their medication and support in the same place. With mental health care, they will more often begin to want and accept the help they would otherwise reject. Legalize all drugs, especially marijuana, to eliminate the profiteering black market and end the gateway through which people find deeper criminal activity and harder drugs. Provide universal basic income, education, and healthcare so people can find meaningful ways to contribute based on their strengths, especially those who don't fit the mold of today's society. This would also remove dependence on jobs for access to resources that maintain life and mental health. Tying healthcare to employment traps unemployed individuals in a vicious cycle. Limit the ability to purchase non-personal use, investment, real estate, especially in corporate, foreign, or large-scale for-profit ownership. Let people who use a house own the house. This will drastically improve the health and affordability of the housing market by reducing the billions of dollars in profit that mega-landlords make simply by inserting themselves as middlemen between shelter and people. Increase public transportation options and provide tax incentives to employers who allow remote work. This will significantly increase low-income workers' access to a variety of work environments. Many people now have no employment options because they cannot reliably work anywhere beyond walking distance. There are many ways to structure society and systems to help people experiencing homelessness, even from complex causes like mental illness and addiction. However, most solutions restrict the profits of big industries, and society often prioritizes corporate profit over everything else. Story 47. One at a time. If I am going where they might be, I carry kits with a few essential items, especially in winter. It is not a solution, though. Story 48. We need to rethink urban infrastructure entirely. Why not treat homelessness like we treat climate change? With innovation, not just charity. What if cities repurposed empty office buildings, many available post-COVID-19, into vertical housing hubs? Add on-site healthcare, co-working spaces, kitchens, therapists, and digital access. Not just a bed, but a shot at rebuilding life. Fund it with public-private partnerships, similar to those used for transit or sports stadiums. Also, start treating data as a tool, not surveillance. Use real-time information to connect people with services instantly. No 6-month waitlists, no broken systems. Story 49. Ask why. If you suddenly lost your home, would you have anyone you could stay with? I know of a case where a family was made homeless and a lady took them in. She went to work and came home to find her house ransacked. Even if it was temporary, I would not be homeless. I might have to couch surf, but I would have a bed. My boss would probably let me use his office at night. A friend's son, even at about 16, said his parents don't know me, but if I were homeless and asked them, he knows I could stay. Some people are just unlucky or have made very bad life choices and burned every bridge. Story 50. Stop pandering to the top 0.01%. End the lie of trickle-down economics. Invest again in education and universal healthcare. Story 51. It has to be a countrywide solution. Anytime a city tries to improve the lives of their homeless population, they end up with more homeless individuals. Therefore, every county in the United States needs to offer the same support. What that looks like, I do not know, but it has to be safe and hopeful. We need to do a better job of preventing homelessness by providing jobs. Maybe we should even coordinate moving assistance for people who have lost their jobs. This would require a significantly large bureaucracy. Severely mentally ill people and those struggling with substance addiction need to be placed into mental health hospitals or prisons. Story 52. Build more and better housing at lower costs, like Vienna did with its municipal housing. Provide universal basic income so that jobs are how we afford luxuries, not necessities. Provide universal healthcare so that one random misfortune does not bankrupt people. Train and fund many more mental health professionals. Change farm subsidies to reduce support for commodity crops used industrially and support more food meant for humans. How to pay for it? Easy. While trickle-down economics never worked, bubble-up economics does. All the items above will absolutely grow the economy. This will leave plenty of room for people to get as rich as they like, while still allowing a fairer tax system that undoes the global oligopoly we have now and raises enough revenue to fund all the programs above. Story 53. I help them as much as I can by buying them food. Anyone can become homeless, and it is not just because of mental health. It is because humans have to survive for many years. Story 54. I love how most of these suggestions do not even tackle housing. Literally, the number one cause of homelessness is high housing prices. Story 55. Other factors causing homelessness that we can and should solve include income inequality, mental health services, treating drug addiction as a health issue, not a crime. If a few people at the top did not destroy everything good and consume the remaining resources, homelessness would be reduced. Story 56. Honestly, nothing. You will never stop it because many people choose to live this way. At least that is how it is in Tucson. They do not want to work a paying job, they do not want to follow rules or laws, and they have no desire to be productive members of society. The only solution I can think of is blocking off land for them, but that is not fair to the normal, hardworking, civilized people who pay taxes. Story 57. Cut the overbloated military budget by 70%. Stop all stolen money going to Israel. Now there is plenty of money. Implement universal health care and free college. The government owns all utilities, which are now free to everyone. Build underground housing using cargo containers, with gardens above ground. All housing must be self-sufficient, using solar, wind, and thermal energy. Outlaw grass yards. All. Housing must have a garden and promote nature. Banks must house the homeless in empty buildings. Outlaw billionaires. After $900 million, the money goes back to the people. All gasoline cars can now be traded in for free electric cars. Everyone receives free government car insurance. Politicians now make minimum wage and must account for every minute they work. Millionaires cannot work in the government. Story 58. Build more housing, and as supply increases, house prices and rents come down, reducing the number of people pushed to the margins. With lower costs, charities and local authorities can afford to own or lease more properties, which they can then offer directly to those in need. There are other measures we could take, but this seems to be the most important part of any solution to homelessness. Story 59. I wish I knew. The guilt is something I have to suppress rather than think about because it is just too unfair to accept. Story 60. Turn a few hotels into homeless shelters. People can barely afford vacations nowadays anyway, so it would not be a huge loss. Story 61. Honestly, I know that I am not big enough to change the world. I gave up on that notion a long time ago. If you want to help a homeless person, give them some money. That is what I do. It is not up to you what they do or do not do with it. If you are going to give, do so without conditions. The reality is that the homeless do not have to be starving. They do not have to be sleeping in the streets. They do not have to be begging for change. Our society is simply broken, and we are part of an economy of plenty, sometimes even too much, but only for those who are willing to play the game. For everyone who does not fit easily into the capitalist archetype, the message is, you are on your own. Have you ever heard of bootstraps? Story 62. After you earn over $999 million, you are taxed at 100%. The revenue funds healthcare, job training, and opportunity zones in our poorest areas. Story 63. There are enough abandoned homes in the United States that we could give 19 of them to each homeless person. I am sure they can figure out how to get one up to code by using the other 18 for parts. Story 64. Government job program that provides homeless people with manual labor jobs and government housing. Once they have proved themselves, elevate them to the next level of responsibility. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.